Before I begin, I'll explain what the Ganzfeld experiment is. The Ganzfeld experiment was used as a technique to test for ESP, extrasensory perception. It was used in the field of parapsychology, which was big in the 1970s. The point of the Ganzfeld effect is to put you into sensory deprivation, removal of stimuli to the senses. Now, this is usually done by putting half ping-pong balls over a subject's eyes and having a red light shown over them. The subject also wears a pair of noise-isolating headphones and has white or pink noise played. Now, this goes on for about 30 minutes, and a person tries to send a message by speaking to the person while everything is recorded by hand or by video. Now, we made a few alterations to the procedure to better fit what we had to work with, using a bed instead of a chair, speaking to him for only 10 minutes, but keeping under sensory deprivation the same way as the original experiment. I found a red light bulb and a ping pong ball upstairs in the dorms. When I had come up with the idea, my roommate Travis had wanted this to be done to him because apparently there have been saying such strange things happen to people within the Ganzfeld effect. I'm pretty sure he just wanted an artificial high. The experiment was kind of interesting. Most of the experiment that was recorded, definitely the parts that were of interest. I may or may not upload the video, because the recording quality is rather shameful. Regrettably, about 4 other people heard about the experiment and decided to come in and watch, and we started the experiment with 2 laptops with white noise, in case the other one had crashed. The spectators became a major distraction. This was because before the start, Travis said that he had hoped the Ganzfeld effect caused him pornographic hallucinations. Travis was under, and I know he could not hear them. And they left around minute 15. Paul stayed, had decided to extend the experiment to 45 minutes rather than 30. At minute 20, Travis raised his arm and seemed to mutter to himself, and that caught us totally by surprise. I let this continue for a minute before asking a question. Totally random questions such as, where are you from? What are you doing? Why are you here? And he responded to all of them on cue, and would sometimes be writing in the air with his right hand. And it was not until the minutes towards the end where Travis began to answer the questions I asked him. Even though not correctly, he usually addressed the question. But then he started asking me questions, and he asked me eerie things, really eerie things like, who are they? A few times as well, or why are they here? When are they coming? And can they be stopped? And I came up with random answers, really disturbed by all of it. After asking him, who are you referring to, and getting no response other than them or they, I let him write in the air for another few minutes before switching the lights back on. I asked Travis what he remembered, and he said that he remembered his vision going to black, but not all the way. Normal, and having a creepy experience. He said he was possibly dreaming, hallucinating, visualizing, normal socializing, but remembering nothing else. We had the conversations recorded, and he knew about none of them. He had no idea why he said the things he said or why he was able to do so. This whole thing admittedly left me completely creeped out. Not anymore, however, it's been a while. Travis, though, has not been the same since the day, though. I've become disconnected with him since then, probably because I'm not his roommate anymore. I'd always remind him of the experiment, fooling with him, saying your strong subconscious will eventually steal your whole mind, and you'll cease to be Travis and be some insane being, which horrified him. But things like this experiment just aren't natural, and I think we should all face it and stop trying to disprove it. There are just some things in the world that, in all honesty, you can't explain. Ladies and gentlemen, that was the Ganzfeld effect. Now, for this creepypasta, which was focusing on this, this theory, this effect, this experiment in parapsychology, what you're actually reading over here is actually a real thing. So, parapsychology is a real, practice, if you will. It's not exactly looked upon with too much, favor with a lot of the, psychological, a lot of the medical journals, medical groups out there, because frankly, it is almost, it is kind of up in the air, because it deals with things like, reincarnation, souls, and, PSI telekinetics, and all that kind of stuff. A lot of people look at it with a little bit of a, passing by glance, if you will. Now, the Ganzfeld effect, for those of you who don't know, is basically deprivation of your senses, perceptual deprivation. And essentially, by covering your eyes with the ping pong balls, red light, noise being fed into your ears, white noise, pink noise, it's basically it's basically keeping you completely deprived. So essentially, when you are deprived, think of it almost like being in a isolation tank, if you will. Like, some people go into that stuff and they can't last a long time, because when they're totally deprived of all their senses, the brain essentially is amplifying certain noises, or it's trying to fill in missing signals as well. Basically, even think of it like when you're sleeping, right? And you have this really weird dream. Well, basically what happens is your brain fires off synapses, right? And because you're sleeping, what it does is it tries to piece together those random thoughts that your brain is firing off into some form of a coherent dream. Sometimes it can work, sometimes it doesn't. That's why you see some weird stuff in your dream from time to time, which is like, those chunks that just can't be rationalized, or even when they're tried, they're still so weird that they're only rationalized, at the very, they're only rationalized to the very tiniest degree. So with the Ganzfeld effect, basically you are killing off whatever perception you have, and your brain is filling in things, which does cause hallucinations. Now, of course, the hallucinations can go from, light flashes to actual complex scenes. That is a very true thing. It depends on the person, it depends on how much you're deprived, how long you're actually deprived for, and, a multitude of other effects. But basically, some people refer to this whole thing, when you get the hallucinations, as this sort of altered or, superior state of consciousness. And that, again, depends on someone. Do I recommend you put yourself into sensory deprivation? I wouldn't recommend you go into sensory deprivation, especially if you're very prone to this kind of stuff, even without it. Don't do that. All right, I do not condone it. Don't try this at home, ladies and gentlemen. But, if you're into it, if you're really looking into it, definitely go hit up a parapsychological, institute, site, website, journal, whatever, and get some information out of that first. Talk to somebody who knows more about the field than just blindly going into it like these individuals do. Now, this creepypasta, as far as the story goes through, isn't actually half bad. It's just people doing an experiment, ending it off, and it wasn't like somebody died or somebody, went through some life-changing event. No, Travis, the person that this was acted upon, who thought he was going to get some pornographic hallucinations, maybe get laid in their dream, turned out that they had asked questions about where people were, who they are, and that, of course, can definitely be hallucinations as well. When you're deprived, me, for example, I've had hallucinations a few times in my life, and to an extent, I still relatively do. There are auditory hallucinations there, and the very worst, there are really intense visual hallucinations where, when you're completely deprived, you might start hearing things in your head, right? You might start hearing voices or hearing phrases or things like that, and you're going to obviously ask the questions, when are they coming, or can they be stopped, or who are they? Now, again, something a little more complex, that seems a little out there, but it's not something completely out of the realm of imagination. And that's where I think this creepypasta shines, because it's not completely offering you something fake. It's a bunch of college kids trying this experiment out, and it turns out this experiment ended up being real. And because it ended up being real, the individual behind it saw some things that I think they shouldn't have. But ultimately, they did it, and that's where it all lasts. The Ganzfeld experiment, the Ganzfeld effect, whatever you want to call it, is in fact a real deal. And, if you want to do it, definitely read up on the whole topic before you even try throwing yourself into it. But ultimately, it's real. From a story perspective, I think the story does hold itself up very well. Again, it could have easily been unrealistic, but it wasn't. It did what it did, and it did what it did just well enough, and it did it fine. Could I wish for it to be a little longer? Yeah, I do. I wish it was, and I wish we could have gotten a more... I wish this was written in a way where we could actually get the whole interview questions, the whole thing's asked. That would have been a much more creepier way of delivering the story, which is one thing I wish a lot of the creepypastas did, is use more, more unorthodox formats, such as Funny Mouth, for example, which is all just a chat thread. Here, it would be wise to just give us question, answer, slowly but surely getting more darker as we go on, because at the end of the day, it wouldn't be something hard to believe. Somebody exposing themselves to some weird-ass questions like this and seeing something spooky kick up, that is something that simply couldn't be ignored. It's something that could be a very possible endeavor, I guess you could say. But I'm going to end this whole analysis over here. I think that's all I can really say. Interesting story, a little short, but it focused on something real, and something real that can turn into something spooky, or maybe not something spooky at all. If you want to do it, definitely read up on the whole topic before going for it, and if you do, let me know how your experience went in the comment section below, or maybe I might try it, I don't know, that'd be an interesting video idea. This has been another episode of Haunted Gaming, part of Creepypastas, focusing on a lot of the creepypastas that are a little non-gaming related, but I think that's okay. Some of them are usually better than the gaming ones, I think we can all unanimously say that, but here's hoping for another good gaming one to pop in sometime. If you like what you saw, please like, comment, and subscribe. Just like if you dislike it. This has been me, Mutahar, and I am out.